Hey folks, Joe Valley here. My co-host is Pat Yates today. He'll be joining us in just a moment. And our guest today is Jon MacDonald from thegood.com. This is going to be all about conversion rate optimization. And Pat, who happens to own buyhappyfeet.com, asked a lot of questions directly related to his e-commerce business, which makes it really useful and helpful from a user standpoint and what can and cannot be done to help improve that conversion rate and ultimately grow your business. Jon gives some great insights on what to do, how big you need to be to get started, and some of the mistakes that people make by looking at certain types of checklists and just following that approach. So it's very, very good if you want to improve your total revenue and your conversion rate along the way. Here we go with Jon MacDonald from thegood.com. Jon, welcome to the Quiet Life Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me today.
Well, Pat and I are both happy to have you. Pat's got some questions for you, given his own business and entity that he runs, buyhappyfeet.com. Everybody check it out. He's partners with some guy named Robert from Shark Tank. And runs a hell of a business, in addition to being one of the top Quiet Light advisors. But enough about Pat. I'm bragging on Pat right now, Jon, instead of you.
I'm not that important.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm happy to deflect.
You're vitally important, Pat. Jon, for the audience that doesn't know you and thegood.com, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, founder and CEO of The Good. We are a conversion optimization firm. So for about 15 years now, we've been helping brands convert more of their visitors into customers, mainly through data science. So helping brands to track every click and movement that's happening on their site, understand where people are dropping off in the funnel and why, and then helping them fix those issues.
Now, first I have to ask about the URL, because that's a hell of a URL, but that's 15 years ago you got that, right?
It is. And, great story behind that. I'll try to keep it short, but I bought it from somebody who was on a yacht. And that's
of course he was.
Really the
sounds
story.
like drinking might have been involved there. All right. This is going to be a short story.
I wasn't on the yacht, but I found the domain. I tracked down who owned it. And I bugged the company's secretary every couple of days until she finally said, look, our owner, he's gone. He's on a yacht on basically sabbatical, and he's off the grid. And I don't know when he's coming back. I don't want to tell you anyways. And I don't really want to deal with this. He's probably not going to sell it. So just stop calling. And I just kept calling. And eventually she said, okay, I'll get the message to him. And then I got a call from him and he's like, I hear you won't leave me alone or leave my secretary alone. What do you want? I said, I want thegood.com. How do we make this happen? And he threw out some ridiculously high number and was basically a go away number. And I said, I'm going to keep calling until we can work something out that's reasonable. Long story short is I got him to finance it, sell it for way cheaper because the economy, this is 2008, the economy kept tanking. He, miraculously was no longer on a yacht and was back in his office and was looking for some cash and was willing to sell or finance it for me and do it for fairly cheap comparatively to where we started. And here we are 15 years later with the domain.
A true entrepreneur's process, right, Pat? I mean, just tenacity, not giving up, and actually getting him to go from a huge number to financing a smaller number. Pretty impressive.
It's actually pretty funny. What kept you from going and finding an alliteration of it? Let's say you added a word in the middle, on the end, or something like that. Because being patient that long, not many people would do that to try to get the right domain name.
Well, we had the Good Group. So I had a fallback, thegoodgroup.com. And the reality was, though, that's just not as cool. And, our mission was started with our mission statement still to this day is to remove all of the bad online experiences until only the good remain. And I just felt it was really important that we said the good, that's who we are. And that's what we want out of the e-commerce shopping experiences. And that led us to just being pretty tenacious about getting the domain.
I love it.
I think I walked you right where you wanted to go with that one.
I appreciate the softball pitch.
Really good. That's a really good way to put it.
On your homepage, John, it says 98% of your website visitors won't buy from you today. Can you elaborate on that and help us out with what you do in that regard?
Right. So I think it's pretty clear the vast majority of spend to get people to your site is not going to convert from that visitor into a buyer. And, a lot of people have that average industry conversion rate of 2%. And so that's where we get the 98% aren't going to buy. And so a lot of people are concerned about getting that conversion rate up. And they focus on the conversion rate number, not on the people who aren't converting. And so that's really kind of the flip there is 98% aren't buying. You're worried about getting from 2% to 3%. I'm more worried about getting you from 98 to 90. Right.
So more of why are they not buying versus how can I get them to buy?
Exactly. So it's removing those barriers. Right. And the number one things e-commerce brands do, and really just, shoot themselves in the foot right off the bat, is they immediately go to discounts or promotions. Right. They immediately go to, I'm going to do an email pop-up with 10% off. Give me your email and I'll send you 10% and I'm going to convert higher. And the challenge is that they really hurt themselves because they get on this unsustainable discount hamster wheel that they just can't get off of. It's really hard once you have that going to retrain your customers, right? So customers who come in via a discount are forever going to be a discount customer.
Hold on, John. I just have to say, Pat, what the hell? I just went to buyhappyfeet.com and lo and behold, there's a 10% off Easter code sale there.
Yeah, I tell you what, John, you mentioned something that is really, really poignant. A lot of people, and I tell you, I'm one of those people that I try to do, like Joe said, we will do targeted things. We get discounts to get people in. But I'm also one that hates doing like closeouts because I hate to have a customer come in and not be able to spend their full amount that they would like to spend because basically you're trading money, especially if you're selling it at cost. So it's really interesting to me, that philosophy. So can you expand on that a little more and maybe how you've encouraged people not necessarily do that? Because to be honest, I'm an offender of all of it. That retargeting email that'll be 10% off if they don't buy. And I always thought that would be a good way to convert it. So I'm interested to hear your insights about why it doesn't.
Well, it might work for the initial sale, right? Yeah. But your customer lifetime value is what's going to tank because once somebody, one of two things are going to happen. Once somebody buys, they're never going to want to pay full retail price again. So they're either just not going to buy or they're going to be in search of a discount code that they're just going to get frustrated because they're not working, right? They're going to go to all those discount code sites and they're going to try every code. And then in your checkout, all of them are going to say invalid or for new customers only. And they're just going to leave. And that's going to severely impact your cart abandonment rate. The second thing that's going to happen is they're going to go back to your site in an incognito browser, and they're going to give you that junk AOL, MSN email address that they send all their spam to, only to get that 10% off. So now what has happened is they're going to convert using that. You're going to think you have a new customer. Your database, your attribution's off. You're paying more to your email service provider because you're emailing the same person at two different addresses, and you're charged per email you're sending to in a lot of cases. So what happens is you've now created more problems for yourselves, all in the eye of 10% off, right? Because now your cost for email sending has gone up, especially if you're doing text messaging, that's gone up now. Now you've given somebody a discount that really doesn't deserve it or need it. And the reality is you've created this unsustainable discount that anytime you feel like you need more revenue, you're going to run another sale. Or anytime there's a holiday, you're training people to run a sale.
What is the alternative here, right? I mean, this is what everybody thinks they need to do. So what's the alternative? How do they still capture those sales without offering that discount?
Right. So in order to get off this hamster wheel, the first thing I suggest you do is one, not just pull it out all the way, right? Start by gradually reducing these, right? The first thing I would suggest doing is to do something that I like to call addition, not subtraction. So most brands go to subtraction, subtract $1 or percentage off. Think about the addition, right? Add more value instead of subtracting cost. So how do you do that? You could do bundling, right? So if you buy more, you get savings, right? And that's inherent and you can promote it in that way. right? But you're getting people to spend more. You could also do things like free gift with purchase. Something that costs you less than that 10%, most likely, you're also giving them, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times when I wear, it's hard to tell. I'm 6'7". I wear a 15 shoe. On a podcast, it's hard to tell, but I have a couple of places I go to buy shoes because I can't just find them anywhere, right? It's really hard to find size 15 shoe anywhere. And one of my favorite things is they always send, finding socks in my size is a problem too. One of the things they always do is give me a free pair of socks when I buy shoes. And it's like, that's great. Now I'm introduced to a new product. Now I go back and I buy more and more of those socks. In fact, I just did this the other day. There's a brand called Lasso that makes compression socks for playing basketball and other sports. And I bought a pair of shoes. They threw a pair of Lasso socks in. And now I go back to that company and I just buy stocks from them instead of even going direct to Lasso brand.
John, let me ask you a question. It's really interesting you say that because I was going through this exercise, looking at my business, thinking about, honestly, it's really ironic because the exact same thing is adding in socks, slippers that match a pattern. But the reason I mentioned this is because the reason I started looking at it was people were talking about the adding value versus discount. I've heard a lot of people speak about that. But again, I don't know, without running that, a lot of people might be fearful of spending more money to be able to try to keep that engagement if it doesn't work against the discount. How do you mitigate that? And how do people decide between the two avenues? I mean, I hear what you're pitching, but it is an investment for people to be able to do that, and they have to believe it's going to work.
Well, you have to look at it this way. 10% off is an investment as well, right? And a pair of socks at your cost should cost you less than that 10% discount. So the risk is actually less, right? In terms of monetary risk. And there's a whole bunch of things you could do there. I talked bundling. You could sell a pair of slippers with 3 pair of socks at a discount over if they bought those all individually. You could do cross sells and really focus on promoting those cross sells. There's just really need to get a little more creative here. You could do partnerships with other brands, right? That's what they did with the Lasso socks and how I ended up with those. You could do, sampling if you have a product where you want to throw in other products that are related. Maybe this is popular with like cosmetic brands, for instance. You don't want to do a discount, but you want to get people to, learn about new products. And there's perceived value there, right? Send them trial sizes, send them travel sizes. All of that should cost you pennies on the dollar to giving a discount overall, if it's done correctly.
And also the value of that in the customer's eyes, they're paying $8.99 for a pair of socks normally, and that's it saved them $8.99. That could be as much as 8 or 10% of a purchase price potentially, is what you're saying, correct?
Exactly. And the reality is, it could even be as simple as free shipping, right? Or if you offer free shipping, say we'll send you 2-day shipping. That might cost you a couple of dollars to do 2-day shipping, depending on your shipping volume. Where a consumer, to them, there's a lot more value there. And so I think you're hitting on the right thing, Pat, which is, what's the perceived value from the consumer? The reality is, you're going to give someone 10% off and they're going to forget about that until they come back to buy again. There's not going to be any reward when the package shows up, right? They're not going to be like, oh yeah, that's right, I got 10% off, right? Instead, if you throw a free gift in or something of that sort, they're going to be reminded when the package arrives. And so now you have 2 positive touch points as opposed to just the one that is the discount right up front that they're going to honestly forget about until they come back to buy again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to keep looking. I keep looking at your site, Pat, and what you're doing over at Buy Happy Feet. You've got that 10% off, and I'm looking at the black polka dot slipper, and it's $27. So that's $2.70 that you'd be giving off. But then when I click on it and I view the options, you also have, pay interest fee installments for orders over $50 with Shop Pay. And so, I mean, you're offering, that's something, John, that might make sense, right? So spend more than 50 and you've got 4 installments on it. I mean, would that be something that you'd say, if Pat was your client, say, let's split test this, do that offer versus your 10%. Let's see what converts more.
I would certainly want to split test that. But I think if we're getting into what we should be split testing, the first thing we need to do is be understanding why people aren't converting. right? Instead of taking a guess around what we should split test, what we should do is diagnose before we prescribe. And I think that's a big thing that conversion rate optimization over the past probably 3 years has gotten a bit of a bad rap, because there are so many brands and service providers out there who are just running brands through a checklist. And it's really not sustainable to just do a checklist. You really need to dive into your specific site visitors experience, your metrics, and understand where people are dropping off and why. And the best way to do that is to combine both that qualitative and quantitative data. What do I mean? Of course, look at analytics, look at heat maps, understand what paths people are taking through your site, maybe even do a little bit of surveying. But you really want to actually talk to consumers, do user testing. This is where you're going to send people to your site who match your ideal customer profiles, ask them to complete some tasks while you record their screen and their audio. And you want to just encourage them to talk out loud, right? And so, hey, I'm trying to find the right shoe for me, but I know I wear a 15 and there's no way to filter by size, right? Now I'm really frustrated and I don't know what to do. So I have to click through every single product and understand which of these do they have in my size. And that's not a really good user experience.
Let's delve into that for a second. So are you sending an email inviting existing customers to go to your site and shop? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. Who are you finding then?
Yeah. So there are several ways to find these people. Low budget, go to your local coffee shop, take your laptop, stand in line and say, I will buy your coffee if I can steal 5 minutes of your time while the barista is making your coffee. And then throw your site in front of them and just say, hey, you know what? You're looking for a pair of slippers. Do whatever you feel works best, but just tell me what you're thinking as you go through it.
Interesting.
It works extremely well. Now, more advanced for that, and also a little more costly, but more advanced, is that there are tons of databases out there of segmented users who can help you by basically you just go and you send out an email to all of the people that meet your segmentation requirements. And these people are usually trained on how to talk out loud. So you get a little better insights, but you almost don't want them to be familiar with your site and your products. You want those first impressions. Right. Somebody who has bought from you before is going to be biased, right? They're going to be biased by everything that's happened post-purchase. And they also know where they're going. They know what type of products they like. So there's too many factors there. And you also, there's a great book called The Mom Test that is a really great example of this. It tells you how to do some of this user testing, but also it makes a great point that you don't want to ask your mom to be your user tester because she's only going to say good things about it. Right.
And I think she'll be brutally honest. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. Moms can be tough, but I hear you. I hear you.
Maybe we should dive into that, Joe, a little bit and see what's going on with your upbringing.
Let me loop her in. Hold on just a sec.
Hey, John, I guess I have a question. When you started talking about this, when I was reviewing the site, you have a trademark thing that's conversion growth, and you obviously do the audits, on site and things. I see that on your site. You guys do a lot of that, which I think is great. When I look at, maybe explain how what kind of company is really in your wheelhouse. Because I look at some of the conversion, growth stuff, it can become fairly expensive for some people. Maybe it's gauged more for enterprise type clients versus individual straight entrepreneurs. But maybe you have something for a solopreneur and enterprise. So maybe explain how you go in and do that. And I don't know if you employ those user testers, if they contract with you. Tell us about that process.
Yeah. So you're right in that typically there are wide ranges of the type of clients who can get stuff out of conversion optimization. And let's start at the high end and work our way down. So if you're an enterprise brand, you typically have a team in-house and you're looking for some outside perspective. I say this often, but it's really hard to read the label from inside the jar. Brands are so close to their site. They know all of their products. They know how to navigate their site. They know the pros and cons. They wrote the product descriptions. They are not going to be the best to have a perspective on what should be changed and how customers are having a challenge. They're just not. They need outside perspective. And that's where enterprise brands typically will bring us in. We are not necessarily experts at running testing. We're experts at understanding what to test and how to ask the right questions. And that's what gets developed over 15 years of doing optimization. Now, we can run tests like experts and do that stuff, but if you don't test the right things, then you're not going to have the outcomes you're looking for. And that goes back to, I was saying earlier, there's a lot of checklists out there right now that brands are, companies are just running brands through. And those checklists are not going to be effective, but it's the only way to do testing for a couple of $1,000s a month, right?
Right.
So enterprise, that's typically where they would hire us to do a larger audit or consulting engagement over long term. Like Adobe, we've worked with for 7 years, ongoing, right? Now, mid-size brands, generally that's where brands come in and do what we call our conversion growth program, which is what you were referencing. This is a ongoing testing and iterative optimization, right? Our goal with this is to continually learn, test, and build upon those learnings the next month to grow and just continually compound that growth over time. That is what that program has been formed to do over a decade plus. The idea behind that is we'll help you research and understand what consumers are saying. We'll run some testing. We'll learn from that. And the next month, we'll come back, run some additional testing. And we do it in these monthly cycles that are going to have enough time to produce for that mid-market brand. Now, generally, you want to have enough traffic to do testing and get a return, right? If you have anything less than, say, 50,000 unique sessions per month, probably not a good candidate to do testing. No matter what anyone tells you, you should not be doing testing. And this is actually the good part of Google Optimize, which was a really popular testing tool that's being sunsetted by Google. It's free. It works extremely well. But the vast majority of brands using it should never have been testing in the first place. And they were doing it because it was a cool new thing to do, and it was a free tool. But they only had 5,000, 10,000 visitors, and they wouldn't get results that were mathematically accurate or statistically significant because they would run the test for 3 months and get frustrated, and they would just say, "Oh, well, that's a little bit better, so we'll go with that one." So there's a lot of issues with that, but you're right, Pat, that you have to be of a certain size in order.
So the one thing you guys do is you give them a little bit of an insight on where to look if they're having the issue. So you'll take a look. You're not doing actionable tasks. You're telling them, hey, if you fix your faceted search, if you do this on page, if you take your images down to 3, I'm just making things up. There are all these actionable tips that you give them, and then they want to go out and improve it. So how do you measure the metrics? Is it all about conversion rate and how it grows? Because sometimes that's a mixed bag of why people are converting. I mean, how do you measure it?
Well, we are doing the testing for the brands as part of that conversion growth program. Each month, we're telling them what to test, what the insights are out of the data, and what we believe they should test. And then we are building and running those tests for them. But the reality is that not every test the goal is to improve conversion rate. But every test does need to have a clear goal and a metric attached to it. So the metric could be larger average order value. It could be just to get somebody to the next step in the funnel, right? So are people dropping off on your homepage? Let's run some testing to get people to click through to a product category page, for instance, or from a category to a detail to add to cart, then focus on not reducing cart abandonment, right? So you could go step by step down that funnel and look to improve it. But you really need to start at the biggest impact areas. And most brands think that biggest impact area is going to be in their cart. So they focus on cart abandonment or getting people to add to cart. When the reality is it's a funnel. You want to have more people get to that next step. So we often start at the top of the funnel and work our way down because it's going to be more impactful.
John, I'm looking at the people that qualify for that service. And it's, as you said, 50,000, visitors a month. But it also talks about spending, if you're comfortable spending $10,000 a month on conversion rate optimization. For those companies that are doing, $1 to $5 million in revenue that may not be comfortable spending that much, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah. So during COVID, this was actually a big pain point for us. There were tons of new brands that were starting up and approaching us about helping them optimize their sites, but they just didn't have the revenue or the traffic yet, right? And it didn't make financial sense. So what we did is I actually started an offshoot called the Good Ventures. And the idea behind the Good Ventures is to help these smaller brands. So our first product out of that is something called User Input. So it's userinput.io. So we were talking a little bit about user testing. That is where user input really shines. We have a testing pool of several 100,000 trained testers that we've worked with over the years. And we have them all segmented. We continue to build a database on these folks. So we have access to that. And so we wanted to share that with smaller brands at a price point that's very reasonable. So for a few $100s, you can go get some user tests done professionally for you and have really good insight about what you should be thinking about for your site. And we also do through user input what we call assessments. These assessments are, where we'll look at generally 3 key pages of your site and do a video review and provide some recommendations there of what you should be able to test. So it helps people get to that next step without needing a done-for-you service, if you will.
That's really, really good. Looking at this seems like sort of where you start out getting the information. What's interesting is as companies grow, they're probably going to migrate over to the other services as well because they're going to see their ability to expand. This is really great. You kind of basically knocked yourself off a little bit in more of an economical way to be able to use the basic services that people need to be able to at least get them started, correct? That's kind of what this is for.
That's exactly it. And it was to diversify, to get in early with these brands so that we continue to build with them. And also to solve for what I just morally am not in line with, which is that checklist I keep talking about, right? A lot of brands were trying to, service providers were trying to get down to a couple grand a month and just running people through a checklist, and it's not effective. This is a better way to get very specific feedback on your site from consumers about what you should change. And so that's really what we believe is the right way to do it, and wanted to make sure that brands have access to that at an affordable price point.
It's pretty impressive considering the size of some of your clients, like Adobe and some of the others that you've got. How just as an entrepreneur, John, aside from helping people with conversion rate optimization, how did you manage to work with these brands like Adobe? I think we got Nike, Xerox, Adobe, The Economist, and many more. I mean, talk about cracking that door open for us, would you?
Well, it's 15 years in the making. First of all, it didn't happen overnight.
Short time. All you got overnight that success, right?
That's right. I will say a couple of things. The first is that I'm fortunate to be based out of Portland, Oregon, which is where Nike's headquartered. And everybody wants a piece of Nike, but also anybody who has worked with Nike, a lot of other enterprise brands think that you're now validated, right? So part of this could work with any enterprise client, is to get that first enterprise client and then tout that you've worked with them as kind of social proof. And that's really what we latched onto early on. Was let's just focus all our effort on getting 1 or 2 big names that then we could say we work with these big names and have that social proof. And that's where Nike really came in. Now, the trick with Nike, and anyone could do this, Nike's a big corporate machine, but they only have 1 or 2 major agencies that work with them on the marketing front. And then they dole out really small projects to a bunch of small shops. And it's easy to go get some of those if you just start doing some account-based marketing, finding the right contacts for what you do. They really do prefer to contract these things out instead of hire them in. So going and getting 1 or 2 of those small projects from them, and then you've worked with Nike. And then once you're a vendor for somebody like a Nike, because that can be a process to become a vendor for these, get through that procurement team and everything else. If you have the patience to do that, you're on their vendor list, and then people can find you internally, or you can start broadening your account-based marketing out to other divisions, et cetera. That's how we've grown Adobe over the years. Is we started with one contact, and then have expanded that out over time into multiple divisions, and that's been really fruitful.
Well, I think a lot of people can get stuff with Nike and Adobe. Maintaining it is a whole different thing. So obviously you've done a great job maintaining those customers or they wouldn't be around. It's a great way to go about it. It's kind of like in licensing. Well, it was like one of my things. When you do DreamWorks and you do Disney, every other license would assume that there's an opportunity that you at least implement well. And the way that you're starting it builds confidence in everyone. When you see those names, there's no question about it.
Yeah, that social proof is a big thing in enterprise, because the number one thing that enterprise brands are concerned about, or the employees that you're going to be working with are concerned about, is losing their job. They don't want to look bad, right? So what do? Make them look good. And in doing that, they're going to spread the word. They're going to continue to give you more work, because, it's the old saying that nobody gets fired for hiring IBM, right? Or buying IBM, whatever it is. It's true. Like, if you have a safe bet, and you can prove and give them a return on that investment, then they'll come back to you and continue to work with you.
John, one of the other things I see here in your profile is author and speaker. Can you talk about the book that you've written recently? Because I think that's really a way for people to gain knowledge without investing too much.
Yeah. So wrote a book called Opting In to Optimization. This was born out of the pandemic. Going into the pandemic, I said, hey, I have a lot more time on my hands. I'm not driving into the office every day. I'm not taking my kid to all the activities. What can I do with this extra time that is going to come out of the pandemic being fruitful, right? So I decided I was going to sit down and write out all the core tenets that we've learned and that we believe in 15 years. There's tons of resources about tactics for conversion optimization out there, how to do conversion optimization, but there's very little about theory, how to think about it. What I wanted to do was provide the guide for how to think about conversion optimization. And that's what opting into optimization is. It's a practical guide on how to think about how you should approach optimization, and also when it makes sense for your business. So there's basically taking the 15 laws that we found of conversion optimization and putting that into a book format.
And how do they gain the book? How do they buy it? Is it available on Amazon? Is it digital only?
Everywhere books are sold. You can also go to thegood.com/book and purchase it there. You can get an ebook copy there. You can get an audio book of me reading the book. It's also up on Audible, etc., Spotify, all those things. There's a funny there's a passage from Hamilton the musical in there, and I end up attempting to rap that passage in the audiobook. So if you need a teaser,
now that I gotta see.
If you need to buy it, there you go. To give you a good reason to do the audiobook. But it actually was a Amazon bestseller for over a month in the e-commerce category up on Amazon, which had a great reception. We still sell dozens of copies a week, and really excited about it almost a year later now. So,
well, one thing I can say about both of you, you've both written books that have educated a lot of people. I know Joe's book, every time I talk to people, it's like actionable tip after actionable tip after actionable tip, which I think probably people read your book, they're going to get the same thing from it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And this was actually my second book. The first book called Stop Marketing, Start Selling was all about why brands invest all this money into marketing, but very little into actually selling once somebody gets to your site, and all the tactics that they need to be following. And that's what the first book was about. So I didn't want to write another tactical book. I really wanted to write another, here's how you need to be thinking about this, because that's where I'm seeing these days as conversion optimization gets more popular. That's where I'm seeing a lot of the challenges come into play is brands don't know why they should be doing optimization or when they should be doing it. They just hear about it and they say, you know what, I should be doing conversion optimization. And they start off on the wrong foot because of that.
Yeah, I think that's the case too. I think everybody that hears about it knows they should be doing it. They just don't know how to get started. So they can grab the book, Optimizing. I'm going to get Opting Into Optimization. I got it right. And should they just go to thegood.com, John, or how do they reach you?
Well, if they want to get in touch with me, of course, you can go to thegood.com or just send me an email. It's just Jon, Jon, no H, at thegood.com. Feel free to email me. I've given that email address out for 15 years. Nobody really abuses it. I would expect nothing different. But if you have a question, I'm happy to answer it. Try to respond to as many emails as I can. So by all means, just reach out. I'm also really active on Twitter and LinkedIn. So feel free to find me on there. Not hard to find.
Yeah. How do they find you on Twitter? I know a lot of folks use that.
At Jon MacDonald. So that's JonMacDonald.
Awesome. Listen, man, I appreciate you coming on, helping out the audience, and helping Pat out here too, because he needs to improve that conversion rate on buyhappyfeet.com.
You just got one more follower instantly, or just from that post. That was me.
Love it.
Well, I love Twitter anyway, but man, this is really, Jon, this is an amazing business. And I love the fact that you have something that can get people started, to get actual tips, to get going. And eventually, if they build to 10, 15, 20 million, you're going to have the upside to it. It's really amazing. And actually, I think not only going to be a podcast host, I'm going to be a customer really, really soon, because I'd love to see what those what they do with it. I think I'm going to sign up and do one just for my site, because I'm curious. I'd love to see the process.
And then you got to have him back on in a year, Pat.
I need a $399 coupon though. Do you have one of those that you can give out? No, I'm kidding.
We'll talk. Hit me up, Pat. We'll talk.
All right, Jon. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.